the high cost of living and to work together to build a capable, ethical, and developmental state. I can assure the Honorable Mulder that we will not dismiss the proposals put forward by the Freedom Front Plus to ensure that all South Africans progress economically, as he said. We will engage with the Freedom Front Plus and take on their proposals and examine them, and we will do so critically. Where we disagree, we will say so. And it does not mean that when we disagree, we are abandoning the key principles of our Constitution. Honorable Mulder referred to the Carnegie Report, which was published in 1939 or so, and even said 7 years before the National Party won their elections. And this report was inaugurated to look into the problem of the poor whites. And that, I would say, Honorable Mulder, is not a useful guide, because we confront challenges of a democratic South Africa. The findings and the recommendations of the Carnegie Report were influential in the development of apartheid. The commission, that is the Carnegie Report, sought to uplift the conditions of poor whites, but at the expense of Black people. At the expense. Now, the issue of poor whites had become a huge problem in the 30s. It had become a huge problem. It was discussed in church, the Dutch Reformed Church. It was discussed in the universities. It was discussed in the state. And it was felt that something had to be done about the problem of poor whites. They could not accept the fact that white people in the urban areas had become part of the proletariat. They couldn't countenance the fact that white people had become poor, like Black people. And they even said, we cannot ever see ourselves being equal to these Blacks. And they had become poor, Honorable Mulder, as you may recall, because they had been dispossessed of their land. During the Second Anglo-Boer War, Afrikaners in the main really suffered at the brunt of that war. They had become displaced, their land had been dispossessed, and they had become truly poor. But of course, they only focused on themselves and forgot that there were other citizens in the country. So what did they do? Flowing from that report, they then decided that we've got to set up a social welfare system that will advance the interests of white people. And they did. They set up institutions that were aimed at advancing the interests of white people, so that white people should never, ever be at the same level as Black people. They inaugurated laws in this parliament, somewhere in this precinct, to make sure that Black people are kept at a lower level, because they couldn't see themselves as being equal. The superiority complex was just too huge for them not to want to see white people being ordinary workers. So laws were passed to give them what? Opportunities, so that they could have better outcomes in their lives. There was no separation between opportunity and outcomes. Today, when Black people talk about being given opportunities so that their outcomes can be better, this is seen as racist. And this is hypocrisy at its worst. It is. And yet, what was done following the Carnegie Report was itself inherently racist. And what we seek today is to ensure that the disparity between resources devoted to Black people and to white people are equalized. You look, for instance, at the school system. The school system for white people was far better than it was for black people. More was spent on social grants, housing, agricultural support, and social services for white people. Please let us not deny that that happened in this country, because we will be lying to ourselves. What we should now do is to say, what are we going to do to correct that imbalance that in some ways, not completely, was kick-started by the Carnegie Report recommendations? Honorable Mulder, the huge racial disparities we see in access to wealth and opportunities in our country were the consequence of the aid that was provided by the state to white people. Now you say, and I forgot your speech because you say it in Afrikaans, you say, ons het dit self gedoen. No, it's not true. White people are where they are because the state helped them. And that is what Carnegie said. They set up the institutions. I find it quite disturbing when someone distorts history, because you cannot distort the history that we had. Now, this is an important discussion, and I welcome the Freedom Fund's willingness to engage in it. Because for us as Black people, it's a very painful history. And you cannot come and stand here and say, nee, ons het dit self gedoen. We were never helped by anyone. The state, through its laws and institutions, did put you all in a much better position. It made sure that you got the land. When you were dispossessed of your land, it was the state that gave you the land. And today, Black people do not have the land, and it is the state that must help them to get that land. So I do look forward to us engaging in this discussion, because we should not distort history, but we should not rewrite our history. Let us acknowledge that progress has been made through our economic empowerment policies. Let us identify the weaknesses that are there, and let us indeed create a bright future for all our children and grandchildren. You see, the difference between what was done in the past and what is being done today is that today we are saying all South Africans must have opportunities, and all South Africans must have good outcomes, not just a certain group.